Well, welcome to the next episode of UC Buyer TV. Got Dave Gilbert here with me. We got a great guest today, and that we got my great friend Darren Knapp, Poly. Darren leads service provider sales for all of LATAM now. Darren and good chunk of the U.S. has been a great partner of mine. Darren and I think started about the same week. Me at AMPI and Darren at Poly, and was a phenomenal partner. We were hyper loyal to Poly during our 3 years that we launched and ran a successful UC business. Poly, along with BroadSoft, were two of our top partners, and couldn't have had a better partner in crime than the guy we got here on the call today. So Darren, welcome. We're fired up to have you,
Thank you.
and anxious to hear how things are going. So, hey, Darren, I got a question for you. So, you and I have talked extensively in the past about user adoption, and that even though we in the past would take the technology into users, companies, that not all the users would adopt it, that you'd put in this great technology and folks would cling to the old stuff. But I think with what we're going through now, it's really forcing the use of technology. So what's your take, and what's the take at Polycom in terms of how does this change the face of work potentially forever?
The technology, we've seen it on our cell phones, right? The technology just keeps getting better and better and better and more intuitive and easier to use. So that's been a big focus of ours. It's a focus on everyone. One of the reasons that Zoom has done so well is it's really intuitive. You don't need an instruction manual to use it. And all of the top players, anybody who's experienced Teams recently, or the WebEx or LogMeIn's Room, Connect, those are really nice technologies. Within a few seconds or minutes, you kind of get what you're supposed to do. And so that's on the software side. On the hardware side, the challenge for us is the same thing, right? If I've got a headset, you're wearing, one of our Poly headsets now, I think it's a Blackwire 3220, I think, or 3320. And it's as simple as you plug it in and the thing works, right? And that's what you should expect. What you don't know is there's actually a lot that goes on behind that, as far as writing the drivers and making sure that it works with all the different key software that are going to be out there. But then as you get into a little bit more advanced technologies, you start getting into the wireless headsets, and then how do those play? So for instance, I've got the Voyager 6200 UC on, super comfortable. I wear it all day. It just sits around my neck. When I'm on a call, I put the earbuds in. When I'm not, I take them off, and it's always there. But it also comes with a little Bluetooth adapter that I plugged into my PC. I should have probably silenced my cell phone, but if a cell phone call came in and I wanted to take it, I could just hit answer, and automatically I switch over and I'm on my cell phone. You guys are on mute while I'm on my cell phone. And then as soon as I drop that, I'm back on this call. So things like that, to where the user, that we're answering the demand, because I probably will be on my cell phone here in a few minutes. And then now I'm on this video call on my laptop. So those are the types of challenges that we've got to be able to answer, and are doing really well. Same thing with the Eagle Eye Cube. I plugged it in and it just started working, right? All the technology, the smarts are built into the camera itself. You don't have to rely on your laptop to do all that work. Then what we're seeing too is where I'm taking the phone that was my business phone in my office that I used every day, and I just bring it home and I plug it into my internet connection. I'm back up, and the experience is identical to what I had back at the office. And so from a user intuitive, there's no retraining needed. I literally just picked it up, brought it home, plugged it in, and I'm up and running. And then we've got to be able to do things like, hey, well, I may not have cabling at my home office. So now what am I going to do, right? I'm not going to have a PoE switch. I'm not going to have a cable. So do I get it? We've got a huge order of power supplies right now, because a lot of users are taking their phone home. They were on PoE at work. At home, they've got to plug it in. We're getting a lot of orders for the Wi-Fi adapters. Just plug it into a USB port. You got Wi-Fi, turn it on, connect to your router.
Yep.
Your phone's working at home just like it would have at the office. The other big thing too, though, is we're seeing partners send a new phone. So don't touch your office. We don't want to mess up your office, because you're going to go back to work here probably in a couple of weeks. So they'll send another phone, and the user plugs it in, and we've got a zero touch provisioning process where literally they pull it out of the box, they plug it into their network, and it pops up and it just starts working. And so we're able to work with a service provider for that zero touch integration. And that's a big piece of it. The last thing I'll throw in there from the technology standpoint is This came as a testimonial from one of our partners, Terry Kruger, known her for a while. She's at Impact Telecom, and she shot a testimonial over to us to say, the PDMS SP, it's a mouthful, Poly Device Management Service for service providers. That technology that we give free to our partners saved them countless hours of troubleshooting as these workers were going home to start up. So she sent a testimonial and she said, look, had a customer that took their phone home, plugged it in. It was working at the office. They plugged it in at home, wasn't working. Now, what do? It's behind their firewall. Who knows what they plugged it into? This could get really scary. I might spend hours on the phone walking a customer through how to get this up and running. What she told me was they were able to get in to our device management portal, Cloud Tools. They were able to see that the phone had actually registered. It didn't register to them, to their call control, but it did register to us. So we know now that the phone got internet and it's up, but for some reason it's not registering to their system. She was able to get into the phone remotely through the firewall, run a packet capture, and see that the phone was sending out a SIP registration. It was constantly sending it out, but she wasn't seeing that invite come from her server. They deduced quickly that the ISP wasn't enabling SIP. They called up the ISP. ISP said, yeah, you're absolutely right. They turned on SIP, customers up and running in 15 minutes instead of 15 hours. Those are the types of things that we're doing to make sure that our service providers are successful in meeting this type of demand and unforeseen demands.
That's a huge value that I don't think many consumers probably don't ask or know what happens behind the scenes and how powerful something like that is. Because if you don't have those tools in place, then one, you're running a higher support cost as a service
Absolutely.
provider. But the biggest impact is the ability for the service provider to quickly troubleshoot and solve problems that with other manufacturers might result in either data fix or, God forbid, you got to send the equipment back and because you couldn't figure it out over the phone. So the ability to do that remote
100%.
troubleshooting is massive, and certainly something that if I'm a CIO or VP of IT making a decision about deploying handsets, to me that's worth the extra $1 a month or so that you pay to get a product like Poly in the hands of your people. And I also love the fact that like you just described, I got my VVX 350 here off screen, and it's got the same mapping as my VVX 600 that I have at my office. So that times like this, when I get a phone call that comes in on my desk phone, rings at both places, as if I was in the office. So great feature and love it. So sometimes I'd want to be taking a call on a speakerphone, and and I can use one headset. I use this one, which I'll give you another plug. The Savvy 4220. Another cool thing about the technology is that device, I can take a call from my laptop. I could take a call through my desk phone, and I can connect it via Bluetooth. So 3 ways to do a call off of a single headset.
Darren, do you remember when Poly was called Polycom, and we used to go to the Polycom office and get into a $20,000 room of equipment? And then we connect with other offices around the world, and we thought it was so cool. But we had to physically go to a place where there was a huge amount of very expensive equipment to have a video call of that quality. Now let's talk about what's happened just 5 years later. Now we have huddle rooms, okay? And that's that very small room where you can put 2 or 3 people for a relatively low amount of money and create that same sort of very high quality experience. And I get really excited about huddle rooms because I love that idea that I can set that up in my office, I could set that up in my home, and I could communicate at a whole nother level of quality.
The quality, right? It's all exponential. The way technology goes, the stuff we're doing with this, few $100s worth of camera that I've got, this Eagle Eye Cube USB that's doing auto speaker tracking. You used to pay at minimum $8,000, $10,000, $15,000 for a camera that would do that stuff. And there was 2 cameras, and one would look at the room, and the other one would, zoom around and had this mechanical spinning, robot looking head, and that would zoom in on the active speaker. And there's really amazing technology, and they still are if you're going to set them side by side, those are still a superior solution that we've got available today. But let's face it, I mean, that's more of an enterprise boardroom, and you're not going to spend that kind of money for 2 or 3 people to huddle around a camera. On the flip side, you also don't want to have that experience where we bring one laptop in and we all kind of like, hey, here we are in
Yeah.
front of, there's 3 of us kind of like squashed together. It's like the anti-social distancing thing to do. So you don't want that experience, right? And now we've got sub-$1,000 devices that give you that experience for the huddle room. And that's how much the thing has changed. I mean, by a factor of 10, we've reduced the cost so that you can literally just plug in. We've got one that's called the Studio, has this camera in it, has really nice speakers and 6 microphones built in and a USB cable. So you set it at the end on the credenza or wall mount it, and you walk in, you sit down with your laptop, you fire up your Zoom meeting, you plug in, and this peripheral now is your speakers and your microphones and your camera for your computer. You just put your computer on steroids. And the experience from the far side is, wow, I see everything. If you've got a monitor at the end of the room, you plug your HDMI into the same laptop. And the experience is that $15,000 room experience for 3 people in a huddle room for under $1,000. That's how different the game has changed on that.
And refresh my memory, it's the X series, it's the X video series, right? That
So there's
is,
a series called Studio. So just think studio, right? It's kind of
yeah.
like having a studio producer all built into the box. And there's one that's just called the Studio, and that is just simple USB peripheral for my laptop. And that's just Studio. Then we took Studio X, and what we did is we put the computer inside there. So instead of having a laptop plugged into something, the computer's built in, and we've got applications like Teams and Zoom, and we're building others. We're about to do a launch with LogMeIn on their application, and we're working with several others to be able to have their applications natively built into it. So literally, we've got a video out there where somebody plugs it in about a minute and a half, and they connect it and set it on top of the monitor, and they're up and running, doing their meeting within about a minute and a half to 3 minutes. Then a little touchpad that sits on the table, or you can actually, if you've got a touchscreen monitor, you can control it from the touchscreen monitor. So just things like that. And those are super accessible, but fully built in, fully integrated. Just plug it in and it's up and running.
So since you're integrating into all these different widely used applications, and let's say a company's using Zoom as their primary collaboration platform, but let's say that they're working with a partner or supplier who's using, let's say, LogMeIn as an example.
Yep.
Can that same equipment take one call where you're hosting it and you're on Zoom, and use the same equipment to participate in a call that somebody asks you to join that's using LogMeIn as an example?
Yeah. So the answer is yes, with a caveat, right? It depends on which gear and how you're using it.
Got it.
So the long-term strategy is that it's that seamless, right? It's a computer and it's got multiple applications built in, and I just fire up the app and I go and I'm in. And even simpler than that, you can connect the device to your Exchange server, give it an email address, invite it to the meeting. It has its own calendar, and when the time pops up, it just says join, and it automatically jumps to whichever platform that you're wanting to use. And we've got some of that already done. So for instance, the Trio group of conference phones that we've got, the Real Presence Trio, in the 8500 and the 8800, we've got the ability to do multiple connections on the same phone. So on my Trio, and I've got one right here, I can launch a Zoom call. I can do a Skype for Business or a Teams call. I can do a Blue Jeans call, a LogMeIn call, all on the same device. And I can do that join application where calendar says join, I hit join, and it jumps to whichever application it is. That's
Love it.
done. That is done more on a if you want to get technical, kind of a dumbed down basis, in that most of those applications have a SIP-based architecture. So I can do a simple SIP URL call to the device, and we just allow you to basically set up multiple speed dials, if you will, into those platforms. But we're also doing where you can actually register as a registered endpoint in multiple platforms, and then you're natively on each one of those platforms. So that's sort of the next phase of where we're going with that. But today, that sort of simple integration you've got, The other thing you've got is all of the USB peripherals. So we know my laptop can do all of those that you just mentioned. And if I just plug in some peripherals to my laptop, I've elevated the experience. Even on the Trio, we've built it to where the Trio can be used as a pass-through. So I can run a USB cable from my computer into the Trio's USB port. My computer sees the Trio speaker, microphone, and camera, because we can do video on it. It sees all of those as peripherals for my laptop. So I walk into a nice boardroom, got the Trio sitting in the middle, plug in my laptop because we don't have configured whatever it is we're going to be using right now, fire it up on my laptop, plug it in. Now the video, the speaker, the microphones, that experience is what the far end's going to experience instead of my laptop. If you looked at the analyst projections of what was going to happen, 3 weeks ago, we were in a hot market. Right now, we're in an explosive market. It's growing to meet those demands. The partner has to be able to scale. And the reality is unless you're AT&T, or some of the really huge partners, finances are going to be tough, because buying equipment really puts a strain on your capital. I had a partner reach out to me and says, hey, he's a smaller partner. I just passed on a 200-seat deal because I'm out of cash. I didn't have the money to purchase what would for me be a fairly large deal. I didn't have that kind of money. And so we had to pass on it. And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, that's horrible to pass on business. Now, just think bigger and bigger terms. You get a bigger service providers, they get a 10,000-seat deal or a 1,000-seat deal. And they start to run into the same situation, because here's what happens. I buy the equipment, I buy it from the distributor, and I ship it to my customer, and inevitably delays happen. Broadband installations taking too long, who knows what happens, but there's this gap between when I thought the install was going to happen and when it really happens. So if they're finally in service, I put them into billing, and then we wait for them to pay their first bill. Meanwhile, I paid for the equipment way back here. That cash is out of my coffers and in the distributor's coffers. And now I'm waiting for that bill to be paid. And oh, by the way, we're in a tough economic time. We got a slow pay. So what we're seeing is 60 to 90 days is not uncommon from the time that you bought and paid for your equipment from the distributor to the time that your customer gave you the money back. And let's face it, for $100 phone or $100 headset, you're maybe marking it up $10, $15. That's not good math. That's really not a good business to be in. Yep. So one of the other ways that we're helping, the third way that we're helping for scale, is with our devices as a service program. So now that $100 device, instead of paying $100 for it, how about you pay $295 for it a month, $2.95 a month.
Right.
Comes with an advanced replacement warranty. Your customer cancels, you can send it back and stop paying for it. And that really changes it, because now you can go to your customer and say, hey, instead of paying me $110 for that phone, how about I just charge you $499 a month for it? Absolutely. I've got a 100-seat installation. I'd much rather pay those numbers than the whole upfront cost. So they'll do that. And then if you do the math on it, instead of making $10 one time, you'll probably make $70 on that in a 3-year contract. So you're actually making more money using somebody else's money, and your cash flow is now fine, because now you can go hire that extra engineer that you need, put some more money into your marketing, or hire some more sales staff.
Yeah. And always great insights. Awesome having a discussion with you, and love you like a brother, man. So
yeah, likewise, guys.
Be safe. Thanks so much, guys.
I appreciate you so much, and stay safe out there, and just keep doing what you're doing. It's really informative and helpful.